Mom overhears son mocking classmates who shop at Goodwill. She teaches him a harsh lesson. For many children, going to school is not easy. Although many children are bright and have an innate desire to learn, often their peers are the problem and ultimately the reason why some of them don't want to go to school every day. There are bullies in every grade, and unfortunately, anyone can be a victim of bullying, even for no apparent reason. And bullying is precisely the reason that leads us to tell you today's story, a short but inspiring story that once again highlights the importance of parents to prevent their teenagers from becoming egomaniacs and insensitive people, capable of inflicting the worst harm to others without feeling any remorse. Education and the importance of instilling ethical and humanitarian values in our children, two elements that we will see repeatedly throughout our story. Sierra Forney is a happily married and middle-class American mother of two children, Anthony 13 and Margot only 8. Sierra's life is what many people would typically identify as an ideal life with no financial complications, living in a nice house and with a husband who cares for and respects her. And while all that was true and Sierra felt immensely fortunate for the life she had, she also knew that appearances are not always what they seem, and in every family, no matter how perfect it may seem, there are problems. Sierra's husband, John Stanford Queen, was a respected Marine sergeant, and although he loved his job and loved spending half his life aboard a ship on the high seas, this prevented him from spending more time at home caring for his family. For all these reasons, it could be said that Sierra was a full-time mother and that the education of her children fell entirely on her shoulders, something that didn't bother her at all. On the contrary, she loved being a mother and loved her children. But sometimes, especially when it came to educating the oldest of her children, she really missed having her husband to help her deal with the usual and not so usual problems of a slightly spoiled 13-year-old teenager. Anthony Queen Forney had always been known to be a cocky kid. Even when he was younger at 5 and 6, he liked to show off everything his parents bought him in front of others. Whether it was at school, at his baseball practice, or at a barbecue with the neighbors, he always found a way to let the world know how lucky he was. His mother at first didn't think much of it, and his father, when he was home and could see for himself the attitude of his oldest son, believed that what Anthony was doing was natural for a boy his age, and he was simply proud of what his parents were doing for him and his sister. Sierra wasn't so sure about that, but to avoid arguing with her husband, whom she hardly saw, she decided to overlook it and try to correct the boy's attitude little by little. When I was his age, we barely had enough money to buy clothes for ourselves. I think if I'd been as lucky as he'd been, I'd want to show the world too. But don't worry, honey, he's just a kid, he's not even 10 years old. Kids his age don't know what it means to be humble and keep up appearances. Give him time and he'll figure out for himself what he should and shouldn't do. Her husband once told her when she worriedly remarked that Anthony had been showing off his new sneakers in front of his neighbors all afternoon. I don't know, John, I didn't live surrounded by luxuries when I was little either, but I never liked to brag in front of others, much less do it in front of children less fortunate than me. I'm afraid that our son thinks he's superior to others and has the right to humiliate them for not having what he has. Sierra told him, concerned about her son's attitude but without insisting too much. However, time and age did not have the effect that Anthony's parents expected, and his habit of showing off in front of others ended up becoming something else, something much more worrisome and requiring immediate attention from his parents. It was bullying, and Anthony, though not yet acutely aware of it, was becoming the main precursor to it in his class of 6th grade. At first, there were isolated comments without much backlash, but as the months went by and with the use of social networks increasing, those comments ended up becoming humiliations against some of his classmates, especially against those who did not enjoy the same privileges as he did and who he called rednecks for wearing cheap, low-quality clothes. Anthony's parents knew nothing at first, and although they were well aware of their son's bad habit of showing off and feeling superior to others by wearing more expensive clothes than most people, they would have never imagined that Anthony would be able to go to such extremes of violence and that he would end up becoming a real stalker. When Sierra found out, she didn't want to believe it. She held a letter of address in her hands and couldn't help but burst into tears, but she didn't know if it was sadness or anger because it was both. Because she knew about it from the beginning and warned her husband about it, but it was also all those years who wanted to look the other way and decided to ignore the warning signs her son was sending them. So when she read the letter that the school management had sent home, she knew exactly what she had to do, and she would do it whether her husband agreed or not. Anthony, come out of your room right now and come here. I need to talk to you now. Sierra shouted to her son from the living room so that he could hear her without any problems from his room on the 2nd floor. The boy came down to the living room without much enthusiasm and barely looked his mother in the eye when she told him to sit down on the couch to talk to him. However, Anthony's expression changed completely when his mother began to read a letter which explained in great detail his latest school adventures. Mr. and Mrs. Queen, we're sorry to have to contact you under these circumstances, but we feel obliged to notify you of your son's Anthony's disturbing attitude over the past few weeks, she began to read. Anthony remained silent the whole time and crestfallen while his mother continued reading the letter to the end, and only when she finished he dared look her in her eye to try to explain what happened, but his mother wouldn't let him speak. It seems to me that it has been precisely your way of talking which has brought us into this situation. So now and until I say so, you're going to be silent and listen to me carefully. Do you understand, mister? Said Sierra very angrily. In her eyes, you could see the anger and pain she felt for what her son had done. Anthony nodded in shame and listened to everything his mother told him that afternoon. It was the first time his mother had ever spoken to him that way. In fact, it was possibly the first time Anthony had ever received a proper telling off from his parents. He wasn't used to her asking him to explain himself for his actions, so he just listened and nodded until she finished. "I want you to know that I'm very ashamed of what you've done, son. Your father and I did not raise you and your sister this way. Just because you have money doesn't give you the right to trample on other people, do you understand? Doesn't matter if you have a $50 t-shirt or $100 shoes, you're not superior to anyone, Anthony. Just because a kid wears clothes from a supermarket like Goodwill doesn't define him as a person or as a student. You're equals," Sierra explained to her son, looking him square in the eye. The anger had subsided, but his mother was still very hurt and truly saddened by what he'd done. He'd never seen his mother look at him like that before with so much disappointment. It made Anthony very upset and made him realize the seriousness of his actions. "I understand, Mom. I'm really sorry. I didn't mean for all this to happen. It was just a joke, but it's clear it got out of hand," were the only words Anthony managed to utter after hearing everything his mother told him. "I know you're sorry, but sorry's not enough, Anthony. You have to learn to respect others and know when something's wrong. There will always be consequences. Now go to your room. You're grounded without going out." Sierra called it a day for their conversation for now. She needed to reflect on everything her son had done, and most of all, she needed to find a way to punish him that would be really effective and make him realize his mistake. After that conversation, Sierra's main goal was to prevent her son from becoming a bully, something that had already started to happen and of which she was fully aware when she received a letter from her high school principal, explaining that her son had spent the last few weeks teasing and humiliating other classmates for shopping at places like Walmart and Goodwill. But she had faith in her son and knew that with a good punishment and educating him from empathy and understanding, she would be able to reverse the situation. In the letter, it explained how his son and his group of trusted friends had laughed at a couple of kids wearing cheap Goodwill clothes, and how, not content with that, they'd also videotaped the whole thing and shared it to social networks for the whole world to see. That's why Sierra thought that the best way to punish her son and give him a good lesson would be to put him through the same thing, filming him while he was buying clothes in a Goodwill supermarket and sharing it to his social networks for everyone to see. However, unlike what her son and his friends intended to achieve with their joke, what Sierra was looking for with that video was to teach her son the importance of being empathetic with others and to appreciate more everything that life had given him. To teach him to act with humility and not as if his family's money gave him the right to humiliate others. And so she did. A week after receiving the letter and after spending a week completely away from his friends and locked in his room doing homework, Sierra and her son went shopping at Goodwill as punishment. Sierra's punishment not only forced Anthony to shop at Goodwill, but also required him to spend $20 of his own money to buy clothes to wear for the entire week. The 13-year-old was clearly not happy with his mother's chosen punishment, something that became clear when he dragged out the clothes he'd chosen, but he didn't dare complain. In the end, Sierra knew her son would be glad for what she did, maybe not now, but someday. While Anthony did his shopping, Sierra took it upon herself to photograph the whole punishment, and even made a little video of the young man paying the bill and stuffing all his new clothes into a Goodwill bag. That same night, Sierra decided to share her son's experience in a Facebook post, explaining everything she intended to accomplish by punishing her son this way. "Lately, my 13-year-old son has been acting a little entitled, acting like he's too good to shop at Walmart or making snide comments about school kids shopping at Goodwill and many other things. I don't tolerate that. Today, he took his own $20 to Goodwill to buy clothes to wear all week at school. Whatever he found would be what you have to wear. He's not happy and has shed a few tears, but I firmly believe that 15 years from now he'll look back and laugh at the day his mother forced him to shop at Goodwill. I want to teach my children that money isn't everything, and that if you have to demean other people because of where they shop, you will shop there too." And she added a note in the margin that said, "I love Goodwill." Fortunately, Anthony learned from his punishment. The video and the words that his mother wanted to share in networks quickly went viral, getting not only the support of hundreds of thousands of people against bullying, but also an interview on a national news channel to narrate the facts and talk about the issue. Fox 5 News invited Sierra and her son to share the experience and narrate firsthand everything that had happened. "Don't be spoiled, maybe tell them to be thankful for what they have. I've had to learn to appreciate the true value of things through punishment, but it's not necessary. We should be humble and take care of others no matter their social standing or how they look," Anthony said in the interview with Fox 5 News. "I'm proud of my son despite everything. He made a mistake, hurt innocent people who were not to blame for anything, but he stepped back, has repented, and now he knows what is right and wrong. For me as a mother, that's the most important thing, and I think every mother listening to me will agree with me. Bullying starts and ends with the education we give our children at home, and that's exactly what I did," Sierra proudly explained in her interview. After that interview, no one ever made fun of a child for buying clothes in a cheap supermarket again. Anthony apologized to all the children he humiliated, and after learning his lesson, he started to actively participate in all the activities and campaigns against bullying. His mother's exemplary punishment had an effect and made her son, a child who until then thought he was superior to others, realize how lucky he was and that instead of using his power to humiliate others, what he should do was the opposite, Protect and accompany those who are less fortunate, because in this life we are all equal, regardless of the price of the clothes we wear. Did you like this touching and surprising story? If so, we invite you to leave us a comment expressing your opinion. If you want to continue enjoying inspiring stories like this one, subscribe to our channel or check out the other videos shown at the bottom of the screen. Thank you for your cooperation.